Okay, this video will be for creating a bustier or corset pattern. So we're going to start with the front. So you will trace off your 1 dart sloper and make sure to grab off your apex. The next thing we're going to do is extend our dart legs up to the apex. So start from the bottom of your dart leg and extend it up towards that apex. Then we are going to mark a 3-inch bust circle around our apex. So all of these measurements that I'm using are just off of a standard size 10 dress form. These measurements would vary based on a body if you were doing this custom to a person. So in order to do my circle, I like to use the little holes that are on my ruler, anchor through 1 hole, and then 3 inches away, you can use another pen to rotate and draw your bust circle. Or you could use a compass if you have one. Once we've got that done, we're going to start creating our contour lines. I'm going to do these in a different color so that you can see the difference between my original lines and my new contoured lines. We're going to create an entire contoured front bodice. Once we create this, you could copy this off and keep it as a sloper for other designs that could require contouring. So anything that comes down with a low neckline or cuts in on the armhole, those are common designs that would need contouring so that it does not gape at the armhole or gape at the neckline. So the first one we're going to do is for that neck gape. So we're going to draw a line from our apex to the center of our neckline. Then we're going to measure over a 1/4 inch to the right of that line along that bust circle that we drew. So 1/4 inch over, I'm going to mark that on my bust circle, and then I'm going to connect that marking to either side of my line. So this is our first contour area. In between those 2 blue lines, if I had gaping at my neckline, I would remove that area to eliminate the gaping. Now we're going to do a line for our armhole gape. We're going to draw a line from the corner of our shoulder down to our apex. Then we're going to measure 3/8 inch to the right of that line, again along the bust circle. And we're going to connect that to either end of our line. Next, we're going to do a reduction for anywhere that you want to reduce the armhole even further. This is especially good for strapless bodices. So we're going to mark a point on the armhole where it starts to curve out away from center front. So it should be pretty close to where your notch was. And then we're going to draw a line from there to our apex. Then we're going to measure a 1/4 inch above that, but instead of doing it on the bust circle this time, we're doing it on our armhole. And connect that to our apex. Now we're going to do a reduction for our under bust area so that we can shape this and curve it more towards the curve of our under bust. So we're going to measure and mark 1/2 inch away on either side of our dart leg, and we're using our new dart leg, not the original, along our bust circle. So measure 1/2 inch away along your bust circle on either side. And then again, we're going to connect that into our apex And back out to our dart leg. Now we're going to do an area where we can remove excess from between the bust. So you would use this one if you had a center front seam line and you wanted to have your garment dip in between your bust. So for this one, we're going to draw a line from the apex out to center front, and we want to make sure that it's a 90-degree angle to center front. Then on either side of that line, we're going to mark 1/2 inch, and we're doing this on center front, not on the bust circle. So 1/2 inch on either side. And then we're going to connect those markings into our apex. Okay, the next one we're going to do is for above the bust, and this one would only be used for strapless garments. So for this one, we're going to draw a line from our shoulder midpoint. So find that halfway point of your shoulder. Mine's 5 inches, so right at 2.5 inches. I'm going to make a marking, and then we're going to connect that down to our apex. And I'm just going to do it from my bust circle down to my apex. So I don't need that full line, but you can draw it in if it's helpful to you. Okay, and then we're going to measure and mark 1/2 inch on either side of the line on our bust circle. So for mine, it's kind of colliding right here with this one, and then 1/2 inch on the other side. So this one, it collided. Yours, you may have a gap in between. Either is fine. Since this one is already connected down, I don't need to draw in that line, but I'll go ahead and draw in the other side. Okay, next we're gonna remove excess from our side seam area. So we're gonna measure in at that underarm corner, 1/2 inch, and then connect that back to our waistline side seam. The last one we're gonna do is removing excess from the shoulder. You would only use this if you had a shoulder seam, but we'll go ahead and put it in there so that you can use this sloper in the future. So I'm gonna measure 1/8 inch down on that midpoint line and then connect that out to the corner of my shoulder on either side. So all of these areas, and I'm gonna kind of shade in the areas that I'm referring to. Okay, so these are all potential areas for reduction. You would only use the ones that you are crossing with a seam. So for instance, if I had my strapless bodice neckline come here, it would be crossing all of these at the top But if I don't have a center front seam, if my center front is on the fold, then I'm not crossing that between the bust area. So I would not use this one, but I would use the rest. So we're going to move on to drawing in our design. So now I'm going to switch over to red so that you can tell the difference between the lines. The next thing I'm going to do is draw in my neckline. And I want to make sure that my neckline does not cut into that bust circle. If I start cutting into that bust circle, I'm not going to have sufficient coverage of my bust area. So I'm just going to do a simple sweetheart neckline. I'm going to make this a little more permanent with my French curve. So I'm going to come up to the top of my bust circle so it's dipping in at center front like a sweetheart. And then I'm going to come over to my side. And I prefer to raise up my side seam another 1/2 inch just to get a little bit more coverage on that side bust area. So mine's gonna dip down and then it's gonna flatten back out towards that side seam area. So I've got my neckline in here. Now the next thing I need to do is make sure that I have my grain line on both sides. Center front can serve as your grain line for your center front piece. And for your side front piece, we need to have that grain line transferred over. So I'm going to just grab a point. I'm going to choose, what is this? Got my ruler backwards. About 8 inches. I'm just going to make a point there and then 8 inches down here and connect the two to make sure that my grain line is parallel to center front. So I now have grain line on both sides. The next thing I need to do is grab off notches. So we're going to split this. We're going to cut right down these blue contour lines of our waist dart. And then we're also going to cut along those contour lines of our above the bust area. And mine kind of connects in with this shoulder. So So along this area is our princess seam, and this is where we're going to split it into two. So this half will be my side front, and this half will be my center front. So before I split these apart, I need to grab notches 2 inches above and 2 inches below my apex. So grab off your notches, and now we can start cutting these apart. Okay, I went ahead and cut right down the center of that dart area and then right down that midpoint shoulder line. because I want to leave myself a little bit of extra paper in here for blending and truing. If I cut all the way into that line, I'm going to end up having to add extra paper back to blend. So the next thing we need to do is remove all of these contour areas. So now I'm going to take one piece at a time. For this one, we want to remove all of those blue areas. So I'm going to cut along my neckline. And then I'm going to take out this above the bust blue area. That one can just come right off. This one we're going to have to slash and overlap. So cut down one leg of that contour, to but not through your bust point, and then you can overlap that paper and tape it. We're gonna do the same. We don't need that center front, or sorry, that in between bust area, because again, we're not gonna have a center front seam. But here we're gonna end up removing this blue area as well. I'm not gonna cut it off yet because like I said, I need to true this point. So the next thing we're going to do is true. I'm gonna grab my French curve. I just wanna blend out that pointed area at the underbust. And same with the point at the apex. Now I can go ahead and cut away that blue area at the underbust contour. Making sure to follow my new trued line, and then you can cut out the rest of your piece. Center front, like I said, will be on fold for this piece. So there's my finalized center front piece, except for blending along that neckline. Forgot that spot. So right here where you closed that contour, there might be a slight difference in your neckline. So you're just gonna go ahead and blend that and then trim off any excess that you might have. So make sure to blend that neckline as well. Okay, to finalize my side front, I'm going to, sorry, I lost my light for a second there. I'm going to cut out these areas as well. I'm gonna leave myself a little bit of extra room on my neckline because we will need to compare our neckline to our center front and true. So I'm cutting out that above bust area. That one will simply come off. This one here, we can slash and overlap. So slash along one line, to but not through your bust point, overlap, and tape it. Cut off your side seam. Contour area. And I can go ahead and cut off my waistline as well. And then before I cut off that underbust area, again, I'm gonna go in and true. So this one has quite a bit of a point on it. So we're gonna get the curviest part of our French curve in there and take off that point. And then right here at the under bust, we want to make sure to smooth out that point as well. And then at the neckline where we contoured, make sure to true that neckline. Okay, now I can cut out that piece. Okay, we now have a side front corset or bustier and a center front. We would finalize these patterns by labeling them, adding notches, and adding seam allowances. Next, we will contour our back bodice piece.